Cool. Hey, David, thanks very much for being here today. Honestly, for taking the time to sit down with me. Great pleasure. So thank you.
Hey, Legend, I'm a big fan, and the world needs more practical people taking on politics, because otherwise it's just a lawyer's world.
Yeah. So as acting Prime Minister for this week, I really want to know, is there any physical handover process? Do you get a congratulation text from Chris, or do you have to sign a health and safety document or something? What happens?
Yeah, there's a really special handshake that just symbolises. So, no, there's not. No, I just there's a thing called the DPMC, the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet. They're the official advisor to the PM. So usually what happens, if Chris goes away, then I'll check in with the head of the DPMC, and if there's a natural disaster going on, or Chinese warships in the Tasman, or a CrowdStrike software outage, or anything like that, then usually I'll just say, well, what's the situation? Do we need to do anything? And sometimes we do, sometimes we don't.
Okay, cool. Quick, fast 5 questions before we get into it. Yes or no's, super quick. Do you ever sledge your opponents or opposition in the hallways of Parliament or Beehive?
No.
None of that happens?
No, it's just because if you start doing that, it escalates. Where does it end?
Yeah.
So you're better to just be a decent human being most of the time, and then sledge them in public.
Cool. So we'll just let the builders sledge off the electricians and the plumbers, and we'll keep it at that, eh?
Yeah, but that's all part of the building site culture, right? So,
I love it. What's your monthly coffee tab at Copperfields?
Oh, look, if they stop, they use socks to filter it, I reckon. So probably, well, if I'm there probably. Quick maths, 20 days a month probably, because I spend other time up here. So what is it now, $6.50? So what does that give you? About 130 bucks.
Yep.
So yeah.
Cool.
So gee, when you put it, actually, I hadn't thought about it like that before.
Interesting. As acting PM, do you have any power to fire anyone at any moment?
We don't. We have we have a saying that the PM is first among equals, and the equals is the cabinet of 20, so that the decisions are actually made by the whole cabinet. The actual powers that any one person has, unless of course they're a building inspector, is quite limited.
Okay. Do you like steak, and how do you like it done?
Love it. Too much. Medium rare.
Cool. You're welcome at my house anytime. Who's the most famous person that's reached out to you, Instagram or personal?
I have to think about that. I actually got a call from Cliff Curtis the other day, because they're all lobbying because the movie industry wants the government to give them subsidies and stuff. And the whole call, I was just stopped myself and go, Uncle bully! I just stopped myself though, so it was all right.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Sorry, Cliff.
No, it's good. Cool. Number one topic, man, I want to get into the juice of this stuff, because obviously our viewers are all builders, common sense background. I know you come from an electrical engineering background, common sense heavy. Who's put all the red tape on the building industry? Why is it so hard to do stuff?
It's a cultural problem. At the moment, if you're a politician and something bad happens, then you get a chance to be a hero and say, we made a law, so it's all fixed. So whether it's healthy homes, whether it's the response to leaky buildings, whether it's the response to the earthquake legislation, there's someone there that wants to be a hero, and they make a rule. And the thing is, they get their 5 minutes in the sun and then they're long gone. Meanwhile, everyone else is paying the costs for an eternity. And so what I'm trying to do with the Ministry for Regulation, with the Regulatory Standards Bill, is create an environment where actually there's two-way traffic, and we can start undoing some of that stuff. But look, it's just the basic idea that for anyone in government, the reward of making a law is quite high. The cost to spread over a lot of people over a long time, so it keeps happening. That's what we've got to reverse.
Yeah, it just seems like there's so many silly laws that come into play, but is there a cabinet of people that people will put their hand up and say, no, that's a dumb law, that needs to be removed, or is it just everyone's a yes man and saying yes to everything?
Well, I'll give you an example that's really topical at the moment. The earthquake regulations. So, tragedy, people died in Christchurch, and it really shook the country. We get it. It was bad. Then in 2016, Nick Smith, I respect him, he's an engineer, he's now the Mayor of Nelson, comes along as the Minister for Building and Housing and says, we are going to have new building standard all over the country. It's got 10, 15 years to comply, but you're going to have to do it. The costs that has put onto New Zealanders, the abandoned buildings in provincial main streets, the people who've lost their life savings because they did a little bit of maintenance on their apartment complex and all of a sudden the whole lot were in for $1 million each. It's just heart-wrenching. I was the only person to vote against that law. It was 119 votes to 1. Now, I did it because I could see that the costs were going to be huge and the benefits were not actually that great. I mean, earthquakes are bad, but let's be honest, fewer than 500 people have died from earthquakes in our country's whole history. We lose more than that to heart disease every month. So it's not a major priority to put a huge amount of cost onto. But everyone else voted for it because if you didn't vote for it, it seemed like you didn't care about the people who died in Christchurch. And I think it's a cultural problem that often our way of caring is to put a lot of cost onto people that actually leaves us less able to solve our problems and care for each other. And the same thing could be said about healthy homes. The same thing could be said about a lot of the responses to leaky buildings.
Yeah, I just find anything to get anything done, paperwork heavy. It's just, you can build a standard 60 square metre house, the actual build time, lock up, frames on, roof, windows, 8 weeks. The paperwork consent process is 12 weeks just to get it over the line. And it's like, why is it so hard?
So, look, a few things. The granny flat law, I think, is a game changer for a lot of people, especially in poorer parts of the country where, you got a lot of people living around, been there their whole lives. You got the grandparents. You can put a 60 or 70 metre unit on there, and as long as it's signed off by professional tradies, you don't need a consent. You can just do it. Same thing with a granny flat in a big backyard in the city. So, that will help. So I don't want to be negative the whole time. There are things we're doing that I think help, but what we really need is a cultural change. That's why I set up the Ministry for Regulation. So there's actually somewhere you can go. So you look at like the garden shed issue. Someone said, this is ridiculous. Why can't you just put a garden shed in your own backyard wherever you like? And we said, yeah, it's a good point, and now you can. So that's the kind of thing that we're doing, is actually getting some run against the run of play, a place people can go to get rid of bad rules.
I'm very pro on the granny flat. I think it's awesome, and I'm a very small fish in a huge pond, but I built 2 60 square metre houses and had to go through the 3 to 4 month process.
It's insane.
And just my one rebuttal or challenging comment to that was, do you think that'll open up the doors for a lot of cowboys to come back into the industry as well? And guys will think, oh, sweet, no one's going to sign off my work. I can just sell and slap up a 60 square metre granny flat with no sign off,
Well, let's play this game. So, because, see, I could say, oh, no, we will guarantee everyone total safety. The government will solve your problems as long as you follow all our rules. But remember, that's how we got here. There probably will be some cowboys. They probably will make something that won't work. It probably will cost the people some money. But are we going to go back to massive overregulation that makes our whole country poor, that infuriates everybody, and ultimately kills our culture? Are we going to do all of that because some cowboy might do something somewhere? Probably will.
I'm pro the decision, obviously, and but every action has a reaction. I'm sure you guys look at all of that, but I think for a 60 square metre dwelling or under 70, to be able to speed up the industry, get more projects ahead, and ideally, if we can save every time that goes ahead, it's a $6,000 council consent fee. We don't have to worry about. It makes it cheaper for the homeowner,
absolutely,
cheaper for the builder, and it's faster.
Absolutely.
So. And going on your point, I really want to raise something here. I mean, as we all know, builders are super, super smart people. They run the whole project from start to finish. They have to finance it, project manage it, deal with everything.
And they're underestimated for that too.
Absolutely. How do we change the LBP system, sign-off system, to sort of speed things up without so much regulation? A builder's a smart person, takes on a lot of risk, and then they've got someone from the council coming in and saying, we're not going to sign off your portion of work because the rule book here says that's not right.
Well, you've got to get the council off the hook. So this is why the joint and several liability matters so much. And I don't know the chapter and verse of the history, but apparently in the 60s, this was introduced in places like the UK and Canada. We got it too. They dumped it almost immediately and we kept it. So for 50 years, we've said, look, if something goes wrong, the council's the last man standing, they will pay. Now, I was talking to the mayor of Queenstown a couple of years ago, and I said, how's your day going? He said,
did you ask him about the roundabout too?
I know. I'd love to talk about the roundabout, but one thing at a time. And I said, how's your day? Not great. I said, what? And he said, well, the thing is, We've just had to pay over an entire year's rates for one apartment building that our council consented 15 years ago, because we are the last man standing. Same thing, I was at a cocktail party with a whole lot of Auckland Council bureaucrats, 'cause, what a great life I have. And I said, one of the main guys there, he said, look, I'd hate to think what sort of liabilities we've racked up today from signing stuff off. So we're getting rid of the joint and several liability. Now it's a double-edged sword, because it means that you can't just screw it up and the council pays. You are going to have to protect yourself from liability to a greater extent than before. However, it does mean that the council does not have this massive investment in stopping just about anything. Because honestly, if I was running a council, I'd just say no one's allowed to build anything. It's not worth our time. Obviously, they have to have a consenting department. They have to issue consents. So they can't say no, so they just go slow. Now, my view is that getting rid of the JSR is going to make a massive difference. Having the materials equivalence register, we say, look, there's 60 or 70,000 materials, so the council's no longer responsible for signing off the materials. We're taking council's responsibility back a step, so that their interfering will come back a step. And that's one of the most powerful things we can do.
Yeah, and I think what Chris Penk has done, obviously, with introducing all these new materials that can come into the industry, hopefully we can see a little bit more competition with some of the bigger players.
100%. I mean, let me tell you, just stop me from going on, but look, during COVID, a lot of people calling in and all sorts of problems, and tried to solve them when I could, and some did, some we won, some we lost. I had one guy who, because remember, this was the time when people were literally stealing plasterboard.
And people were hiring security to protect Aquiline sheets.
Yeah, I refuse to call it the other thing. I just call it plasterboard. Because it should be a product that has a number of competitors. So this guy had a supply of some other equivalent material over in Australia, but he's having trouble with Auckland Council. And so I actually called the chief executive. I said, look, mate, this shouldn't be hard. Anyway, it turned out the guy that was in charge of certifying new materials had gone home. He lived somewhere up in the Waitakaris, and he hadn't taken his laptop or his phone with him, so they couldn't find the guy. So it took 3 weeks, and eventually, look at a harm. By the end of that, the guy had run out of his supply in Australia. Fletcher eventually got their factory up in the Bay of Plenty, and we all kind of moved on. But the idea that 67 different BCAs or territorial local authorities get to basically run their own market for materials, that is insane. And that's why this international equivalence is so important, because you ever want to really be sad or angry, try going over to Home Depot in the States. See what people pay for 6x4 ply or a sheet of whatever, and it's just they're paying pennies on the dollar compared with what we pay.
I've personally done a couple of imports, 18mm form ply and plasterboard. We won't call it that other word, but the amount of stopping and regulation on the plasterboard stuff was insane. My grandfather was a huge advocate for going up against Fletcher's in Rio 12mm steel plasterboard. So it's good that I don't know if we can say the word mafia, but hopefully one day we can see a little bit more, of a fair playing field.
Yeah, look, I'm not criticising them, but the point I would make is that the councils and the regulatory environment has suited one large local supplier, and they've made the most of it, and in a way, good on them. It's people like me, Chris Penk. It's our job to change the policy so that there can be more competition, and that's exactly what we're doing. Yeah.
And question on that, I've been doing a little bit of study over the weekend. I'm not a politician, but how much of a difference, positive impact so far, has the regulatory standards bill made so far?
Well, it's going to be passed probably this coming month. So it's actually been a 2-year project, just getting political agreement. It's been pretty noisy. But this is the first time that we're actually going to put New Zealanders' property rights in law. And so if the government wants to make a rule, it's got to actually explain, like, we're going to restrict your property rights. We're going to stop you doing this. It's going to put a cost onto these people, like the earthquake legislation did. And once we're forced to do that, I think you'll be less of a hero for making expensive, nonsensical rules. And people who just want to get on with their lives and literally build stuff, are going to face fewer restrictions. So it's a long-term project. It's actually 20 years that the ACT Party's been trying to pass the Regulatory Standards Bill. Yep. We should get there in the next month because this problem is built up over 30, 40 years and it needs to be pushed back. We need to change our culture towards freedom and property rights and away from, if in doubt, make another fucking rule.
Yeah. I know, we need to strip the rules back, eh? Rightio, another hot topic here. Consultants. I've been doing a lot of repricing of projects and I get whatever information I can off the media. Trust what you can. Why do consultants get such a big piece of the pie in every project in New Zealand?
Because the regulatory environment is so stringent that you need to navigate all of the paperwork before you can do anything. And so all of a sudden the most valuable person in the room is the person that can get you through the thicket of paperwork so you can start the job. Once you've done that, the job's comparatively easy, as you say, 4 weeks to put it up, 12 weeks to get consent. And so I hate to sound like one of those guys that, when all you've got is a hammer, everything sounds like a nail. But that's kind of the truth, that because we've had 30, 40 years of, people say it's free market New Zealand. It's not. It's regulated New Zealand. And now, who gets paid the big bucks at council? It's not the poor schmuck that you voted into council is sort of a practical joke, really, on the poor bastard. But it's actually the people who are paid 3 or 4 times more than them, the lawyers and the managers who can navigate through the laws. And that's why I'm so determined to simplify laws and do so wherever I can. Yeah,
good on you. I mean, it's I look at I got one prime example, and I don't mind naming names here, but I had a crack at Darren Toy from KO. He was the general manager for KO, and they'd spent $8,500 on a geotech for some Kiwi built houses, and I called it out on TikTok, and I said I had a photo of my invoice from my geotech bill in Wanganui. I said, I spent $1,800, including GST, for a geotech standard pile house. Why did your one cost $8,500? And he couldn't answer the question. And that to me was just like, that's absolute criminal. That's my next topic on the consulting stuff. But it's like, how do we pass a policy for independent audits before these projects go ahead to get line by line breakdowns of what the consultant charges are on each project instead of a one lump sum consultants?
So you're talking about KO projects or council projects?
Council, KO, I could list many.
Well, there's 2 basic approaches to this problem. One is first of all, there's the sort of Labour approach, which is, the government is always good, don't ask any questions, and if you're missing your money, that's your problem. I don't subscribe to that approach.
Neither.
Then there's the National Party approach, which, for 90 years it kind of works as, look, we're good practical people, and this whatever thing Labour started, we will do it better. And you kind of see that in a way that Chris Bishop's a very competent guy. He's in charge of KO. KO is a much more efficient organisation than it used to be. I respect that, but I take a different view, which is that actually there's no need for the government to build houses. It's possible that there are some New Zealanders who, for whatever reason, can't afford a house or don't have enough income or have some sort of mental health problem, and there needs to be help to get them into a house. But the government doesn't need to build or own that house because at the end of the day, if I'm a politician and I'm spending taxpayers' or ratepayers' money, I can guarantee you I will not spend it as carefully as I will spend my own. So you spend all day trying to make bureaucrats spend money as carefully as ratepayers and taxpayers, and if you're really good, you can make them almost as careful, but you'll never get there. And of course, a few years later, the other side get back in, and then they have another blowout. So you've just got to stop governments doing this stuff.
Yeah. I just find, is there any way that, like, you obviously have the power to make change in you guys at a high level, but how do you get the power to look at these projects that just run over budget all the other time? Every other day there's another article about another job that runs over. How much control do you have to change that?
Probably less than you think. I mean, well, I don't want to sit here and make excuses, but I just give you an example. There was a scientist at the University of Canterbury, and she was trying to use, and this is not a diversion, but it's just an interesting example. She was trying to use high concentration vitamins for experiments on people at the university. I was like, well, that's pretty interesting. But a government department, the Ministry of Primary Industries, was stopping her doing it because it's technically food and there's food regulations. And I said, look, this is going to be quite hard to change. She says, but aren't you the second most powerful person in New Zealand? I remember she had an American accent. I just remember that.
That's
and
quite a good,
I sort of sat there and I was like, well, technically, I guess that's kind of true, but honestly, I'm sitting in my office. Andrew Hoggart's the Minister for Primary Industries. He's a really good guy, but then he's got a chief executive, and then there's someone that works for them, and then they're following a law that was made by Parliament 10 years ago. So for me to actually get your vitamins into the country, like it's it's doable, but it's much harder than you think.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with you. You asked me about a project. So there's a project that's been procured by a bunch of officials. They've signed a contract. They've got variations in the contract. I'm one of the budget ministers. We set aside X million dollars for projects of a certain kind. They let the projects out. Someone's managing the project on behalf of a government department. You'd be surprised how hard it is to reach through and change stuff in real time. Much harder than you'd think.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to make excuses. That's just how our government works.
No. I appreciate your answer. I mean, I just look at I've made a heap of TikTok and Instagram videos using the skills that I've acquired through my journey of being a
which
builder
are good,
to a QS
to a social media influencer.
Yeah, appreciate it. One to another. So I mean, you must get incredibly frustrated when you pick up your phone in the morning, have a coffee, read the news, and you see a blowout project, and you're thinking, I'm at the very top of the food chain, and you must get frustrated if you're like, I can't do anything about this.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
you can, but it takes time.
Yeah, I wouldn't say you can't do anything about it. I would just say that the number of steps, and it's a big ship to turn around, and there's a lot of crew, and to get everyone to pull in the right direction, and there's a few people that probably shouldn't be on the ship anymore. So
how do we politely kick them off?
Yeah, so there's a lot of people on boards of government entities who won't be there soon, or who were but aren't now.
Yeah.
There's a few chief executives of some departments who quietly moved on.
Yeah.
So all of that, you got to get the right crew on the ship, then you've got to start turning the wheel and all the rest. So look, I wouldn't say we can't change it. I would say it just takes longer and it's more complicated. A lot of people, you guys have been in big power for 2 years. Why haven't you changed everything? It's like, well, we've changed a lot, and we're in the middle of changing other things. But
Yeah, do you think people don't have enough? I mean, obviously, you've just really given me really good insights from that. What I get from what people send me, they're like, one very hard-hitting question the other day, someone was like, cool, man, you're making all of these TikTok videos and Instagram videos, blah, 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 but, what's the next step? What do you actually do about it? So for me, this is a great step, obviously, being with you, so thank you. And you guys, obviously, with the laws and policies you're going to pass, hopefully one day we can see some common sense grassroots ideas, so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I would say is that, we're not a North Korea. We're not a dictatorship where one person really can tell everyone else what to do or kill them.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be like that.
Nah.
So actually the way that change happens in a democracy like ours is exactly someone like you gets a name for themselves, puts together some arguments, makes them popular, and then someone like me says, well, I mean, I sort of already agreed with you, but if I didn't, say actually we're going to start giving that direction from the top of the government, and it filters down. So this is how change happens in a democracy, and you want it to be this way, because remember, if we can make change fast, I guarantee you the other guys who like the power of government will make it faster.
Yeah, no, I really like that. I appreciate you giving me a bit of a pro there. That's cool. Just trying to think how to word this question. Sorry, Sheree. So I want to get a little bit creative with you here. I had an idea, and this is something I spoke about with the QSs at our company the other day, and we said, government gets tenders, guys go on, they go to a portal, they fill stuff out, they put their best foot forward for these projects. How about if councils, government projects, before they go out to tender on government gets, they get an independent audit from a company that has no personal interest in winning the project, there's no backhand deals, and that goes to the council or the government and says, cool, you've got, as per the market rates at the moment, you've got $1 million for this tender. Now you can go out and market to your preferred contractors, which is another conversation I'd like to have with you. How would something like that sit as an independent audit to say, this is the market rate, there's no need for you guys to be charging 30, 40, 50% more?
Yeah, I like that. I mean, at the moment, there is, again, another long process, but there are business cases and peer review and checking.
After it's been done, though, correct?
No. This
Before?
is before the cabinet agrees to do a project, and at council level they'll have something similar, probably a bit simpler. But the idea of having some sort of independent audit panel that does a final check is not a bad idea. But I'd say it's not so, believe it or not, it's not so different from what happens with business cases now. And if you look at, like, say, I mean, this is not building, but software we've been dealing with a bit lately at cabinet level. There's an independent steering group across government, so that if a government department's speccing up a software project, which you think could go wrong, there's actually some experts that are across the whole of government that check in on that. So I like the idea, but I'd say it's not so far off what we're doing now.
That's good. I did a one on the Milford Steps, and I did a lot of precast work for Dominion when 5 Mile was going ahead. Best experience ever building precast panels. Commercial deadlines, oh my gosh, that was a whole different world coming from a residential building background. So I priced up to look at these stairs that were being boxed up 4x3, whatever it was, and I came out with a price that was about $35,000 a step, no more than 4 days labour, allowed for P&G, steel, everything. And the cost that came out online was $250,000, and that one went viral on TikTok. And a guy called me and said, "Hey mate, I was the labourer on that project, and you were bang on. We were on and off site for 3 days." And the amount of bureaucracy and no doubt P&Gs and consultants and design costs. But I just feel sorry for the Milford ratepayers that paid for those stairs.
Well, that's the issue, right? You can't get stuff done because there are so many people clipping the ticket who don't work with their hands and aren't practical. And I, in part, blame the massive inflation of universities over the past 30 or so years, where successive politicians have said to middle-class parents, "Your kid's smart. They don't have to be a tradie. They can have a cap and gown. Have their photo taken by the clock tower." and parents have said, "Oh," and then they said, "Oh, and we'll take the interest off their student loan, and then we'll make it interest-free forever, and blah blah blah, and we're going to cap the cost of a degree." And what it's meant, sadly, is that a huge number of kids have been put through these factories, given the piece of paper. The parents got the photo taken. They're very proud. And then I talked to the Plumbers Guild, and they said their biggest source of recruits is actually AUT graduates. So I think part of what we've done is we have trained a huge number of people in process, not enough people in practice. Yeah,
I would totally agree. And I do want to circle back to that for my last comment, but the next one that I really want to do a little deep dive into, and this is a big question I have for you. The regional councils, how do we get transparency with all of these councils? I've done endless Legima requests now, and I get stonewalled with commercial sensitivity. I want to do my job really, really well, and I want to price apples with apples. I don't want to go off an NZ Herald or a Stuff article.
I would not recommend that, especially not Stuff. Jeez.
Yeah, thanks that you said that. I just can't get anywhere.
Yeah. Oh, look, I think what I'd start by saying is look, regional councils, in my view, are part of the problem. They exist largely because of the Resource Management Act, and they're actually hated by district councils because they make it hard for district councils to develop infrastructure, which is one of the reasons we got a problem with housing supply in this country. So I think it's well worth questioning whether they should even exist. However, if you got a specific problem with them complying with Lagoima, I'd be pretty happy to look at that, and we can work with the Ombudsman and make sure they're following the law at the very least.
Yeah, so I did a little bit of reading. And do you think there's a clear misalignment with commercial sensitivity and Local Government Act? And I'm going to get quite fancy here with you, and this is the first time I've read the legislation. Section 14A, a local authority must conduct its business in an open and transparent and democratic manner. And I was doing a bit of reading around how different it is between what that states in the law and commercial sensitivity. Because I just want to, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, with just as with the Official Information Act, there are two things that you've got to weigh up, and ultimately it's judges that get to do that. But I'd be keen to actually take some of those to the Ombudsman. We can do that if you like, because the Ombudsman is the first port of call for breaches of Lagoima.
Yeah.
And look, they do have to weigh up commercial sensitivity. They want people to keep tendering and doing business with them.
Of course.
And if they think that every document you give to a council is going to be public, then people won't do business with them.
Yeah.
Now so you understand that. Also, as you said in Section 14 there, they're supposed to do business in an open, transparent manner. And it may be that they have succumbed to the temptation to use that commercial sensitivity to avoid their other obligation. If that's the case, I think we should have some fun with them.
Yeah, let's do it. Keen to do that. Do you want to take that corner, take a 2-minute
No,
break? Is that okay with you?
It's fine. I don't even know who it is.
Yeah, is that okay? Just a quick...
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I am getting everything I need.
Yeah,
so,
cool.
Yeah.
Right. I must say I'm pretty impressed over
Yeah.
you don't have a phone case on.
Oh, no, I got the wallet
You
on
don't
the
see
back.
that often with an iPhone.
It's 2 minutes, okay.
Living dangerously, yeah.
Thanks, mate. I appreciate it.
Want water?
No, I'm okay. Thank you, yeah. No, you're all right. Good.
Thanks, David. Do you need anything?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Sweet.
Hi, Julie. It's David Seymour here. How are you? Hi, it's David Seymour. How are you?
Sorry, give me 2 seconds.
Yes.
Okay, there we go. I just muted the mics before because David was taking phone calls. So
Oh, secretive stuff, eh?
I didn't want to be that guy. We're still recording, so just pick up.
Okay,
whenever
cool.
you-
3, 2, 1. Pretty keen just to circle back and touch on that one question again. I know you mentioned around, too many barriers to make change, due to sort of like cultural issues. What kind of hope does that have for, Kiwis that have left offshore to go or planning on leaving, and they think, if we can't have any change in New Zealand, why should we stay? Like, surely there must be a way we can make change faster for these people.
I don't think New Zealand's in decline. I think it's in a cycle. If you think back to 1980, 2% of people left. It was a really dismal time. Then in the 80s, we had really a revolution. And you think back to the 90s, the early 2000s, it was a kick-ass time. I mean, I remember moving to Canada in 2007, and I was like surprised that they were as advanced as, I thought New Zealand was the greatest. I think we've gone into another one of those periods of frustration, and it's around our economic productivity, it's partly around red tape and regulation, it's partly about our cultural identity, some of our services like education I don't think has really served us well for the last 20 years. So we're in one of those periods of frustration. Same thing happened in the 30s, same thing happened in the 1880s. We tend to do this about every 50 years. I believe that we are going into one of our periods where we're going to confront some of these demons and fix them. We've got a track record of doing it. So the hope for New Zealand is that we're not in a state of decline. We're in one of our typical cycles where we let all the problems sort of mount up in a kind of Kiwi way. Oh, she'll be right, and then she's not right. And, then we've got to make some changes. But we'll get there.
Yeah. I mean, we've also just got to look at with, 40% of our employment force in New Zealand being construction and so many tradies leaving offshore. What is your kind of like message or light at the end of the tunnel for these guys to be like, hey, things are going to pick up and get better?
Look, in the ultra short run, interest rates are going to do a lot of the heavy lifting. You look at the prospect of a project stacking up, the holding costs are lower because of interest rates being lower, the amount that the ultimate customer can pay is higher because they can borrow cheaper, so work is coming on stream, and I don't want to jinx it, but it feels like there's more activity now, so that's the first thing. In the longer term, we've got a government that is the most reformist in a long time. You look at the key, love JK, but don't think that there's anything you can point to that the key government did that actually made life easier for business and tradies. I think the Labor government under Ardern and Hipkins probably made it a bit worse. Now, for the first time in a long time, you've got granny flats, you've got garden sheds wherever you want, you've got a materials equivalence register, you got rid of joint and several liabilities. So, you're getting a new resource management law, which is actually based on property rights. So there's a huge amount of stuff going on that will actually make life easier. And this is what I mean by New Zealand's in one of its dips. It's gone through a bit of a slump, but we're starting to confront the problems and solve them.
Yep. So we'll go to this point here. I've obviously got a bit of a topic around the future of NZ. I want to circle back to a university comment and an AI comment that you made. But, 75,000 Kiwis left New Zealand last year. We've had endless tradies that will message us and say, we've crossed the ditch, gone to Australia, $80,000, $100,000, $120,000 a year pay rises. What do we do to sort of get these guys back?
Well, I think a couple of things. I mean, one is your real living standard is your income minus your house, and then you've got everything else.
Yeah.
Making it easier to build homes is probably the biggest focus of this government. It's infrastructure funding, which we're changing a lot. It's resource management, which I just mentioned. It's all of the building changes, which we've talked about. Yeah. If you make it easier to afford a home, and housing has got more affordable. I know people have been frustrated if they own it, but there's been a correction coming for a long time, and that's happening. The second thing is, a lot of people go over there and they find that actually it's not, people say, I've got the big pay raise and everything. They find actually when they do the sums at the end of the day, it's not quite all it's cracked up to be. I'm not saying there's not a gap, but the gap's not as big as it's sometimes made out to be.
Yeah.
And finally, New Zealand does bounce back. We've been here before. We were here in the early 80s and we reinvented our country as outward-looking, positive and free. I believe that the rest of the 2020s is about doing that again.
Yeah, nice. I like that. Circling back to the university comment, I truly believe that tradies are going to be the next lot of millionaires. And I think with them, with the amount of jobs that are becoming less on the market, degrees, courses going through university, do you think we need to look at universities and if they're essentially taking money to do these courses, they must be future planning and being, is there a job for these people at the end of this term?
100%. Well, it's like I said before, I wish I'd been smart enough to be an electrician instead of an electrical engineer. And I think there's a huge number of people out there. And sometimes I get students write to me the stuff that they're doing at university, and I just think, mate, I feel bad for you because it's not going to help you in the real world. So I believe that there needs to be more neutrality between trades and other types of training. I don't have an exact prescription. I'm not going to make up a policy now, but there's going to have to be a reversal of this belief that degrees for everyone is always good for all people all the time, because I think there's enough evidence and people feel it. They know that it's not.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you guys, have you looked at artificial intelligence, AI, how that's making changes within government, within councils, within our industries at the moment?
Yeah, I'm sort of... there's your people who say this is going to change the world and everything's going to be different and you won't know yourself. And then there's people who say, look, is this really more dramatic than email or spreadsheet? Is it really just a new search engine? And I'm sort of somewhere in the middle on that. I think there's a particular thing in government that you've got to get very risk-averse public servants to use new technology, and that's harder than you'd think. But I think New Zealand should be open to the possibility, but don't bet the farm on it, is about where I'd be.
Yeah.
There's some really obvious things, like you go to your doctor and they're recording the conversation, it produces notes as a summary. I mean, that's pretty useful.
Yeah.
There may be other things where you can start using AI assistance on your quantity surveying to say, well, look, is there a better way I can do that? And it can come up with something smart that you might take ages to do manually or might not even think of.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's applications for it. But when people say, oh, this is going to, the world will be totally different by 2035, I'm like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, not for tradies, but maybe for other types of jobs. You mentioned the word risk adverse there, and this is one thing I really wanted to ask you. How do we get more Kiwis, boomers, people that have obviously stacked a lot of wealth and money into property, to sort of take more of a calculated risk and maybe think, we'll pull some of our equity out of our house, invest in a young person that's between 18 and 28 that's got this great business idea and thinks there's an opportunity to do something great in New Zealand instead of sort of just heading offshore and getting big funding elsewhere?
Well, I mean, you got to take away the irresistible drive that you're getting 10% a year almost risk-free by investing in a house.
Yeah.
Of course, people aren't going to invest in risky stuff that might not get anything like the same return. But for the last 20 or 30 years, I mean, from 1990 to 2020, the price of a section in Auckland went up 900%. I mean, that was almost better than investing in Apple.
Yeah.
If you knew to invest in Apple in 1990.
But that's really harming our productivity as a country.
I totally agree. So, it's Resource Management Act reform. We're doing that. We're replacing it with a law based on property rights. It's infrastructure funding and financing. We're doing targeted rates and time of use charging on roads and a whole lot of stuff that will actually mean infrastructure works better. And we're also changing the building materials. Now, if you look at Texas, say, one of the fastest growing states in America, some of the cheapest housing, because when house prices go up, they just build more. They keep growing, and what do? They invest in tech, and they also have, I think, the highest or second highest income in America. That's where we need to get to, and it is starting to happen. I think also we just need to stop beating down on people. Like, you think about the word entrepreneur. People say, oh, it's a bit,
bit fancy.
It's a bit sneaky, and here's how I think about business. It's four types of people coming together to achieve what they couldn't achieve separately. It's a beautiful form of human cooperation. So you got your investor, who might be your boomer, trying to get a return on what they've saved.
Yep.
You've got your entrepreneur, who's got ideas, trying to make a dream reality, as Ray Kroc said at McDonald's. And then you've got your worker, who's got their time and talents, but they don't have all the things they need in life, so they want to exchange that for some money. Then you've got your customer, who needs something, like a new building perhaps, that they can't do themselves, or maybe they could, but it would take a lot longer and it wouldn't be as good. You bring together your investor, your entrepreneur, your worker, and your customer voluntarily. No one's ever forced into any business. That's why I call it beautiful, voluntary human cooperation. We need to start celebrating that in our culture, not this whole tall poppy, And you look at it in politics, it's always someone else's fault. You listen to Chloe Swarbrick, what she's really saying is someone else's success has caused your problems. And if you vote for me, I'll tax and take it off. I mean, that's what she's really saying.
Yeah.
And it's not going to get us anywhere. We're not going to get rich by selling each other houses, I agree, but we're not going to get rich by finding new ways to tax each other either, Chris.
Yeah, but we also need to try and remove that tall poppy, create more opportunities and celebrate that more, because ideally the entrepreneur, the risk taker, the person who's putting up the money, that's creating jobs, stimulating an economy and giving people an excitement to stay in New Zealand.
But that's our true identity. It doesn't matter. Some of my ancestors came here 800 years ago in an open canoe, amazing journey. Some of them came from Scotland in a sailing ship. Yeah, I got friends who have only been New Zealanders for a few years that came on an aeroplane. It doesn't matter how you came here. All of us did the most entrepreneurial thing you can do, which is give up everything you know to a totally unfamiliar future to try and get a better future for your kids. I mean, that's entrepreneurship in a nutshell. And immigrating, which every New Zealander has done at some point in their history, that is the most entrepreneurial thing you can do. And because we are the furthest away, we must be the most entrepreneurial people. So let's unite around that rather than all the, my ancestors got here first, so I'm more important than you. I mean, there's no future in that.
No, I completely agree. And I love the, I love the common sense take. And I just, I really look out for people, and I'm always trying to push people to have a crack at doing your own thing, do something on your own, and, always think there are better possibilities out there.
100%.
So rightio. Final question for you. As acting PM today, if you could make one change to make New Zealand better, what would it be?
I would pass the regulatory standards bill, and I would start putting every new law through the simple question, whose property rights are affected by this change, and is there really a justification for making someone poorer to achieve a political objective? Do that, and we won't know ourselves. You've got to start applying it retrospectively, so all the laws we've already got. But if we just took that basic attitude that people have rights and politicians need to justify incursions on those rights, we'd be in a very different place.
Cool. David, thanks for giving me the time today. Really
Pleasure.
Appreciate it. And
you
nice
too,
to meet
mate.
you as well.
Yeah, you too. Cheers. Good
Thank you. Cheers for that. Thank you.
Right, we gotta go.